Hello, my name is Colby Sharp, and I am thankful that you tuned in to watch today's episode of One Question with me, Mr. Sharp. Excited to have Caldecott medalist Dan Santat on the show today. His book, After the Fall, is mind-blowing. I wish that I could experience everyone reading it for the first time. When I got a copy of After the Fall, I just took it to everyone that I could find. Kids, adults, book lovers, non-book lovers, and I just wanted to watch them read it. And I love the reaction that they got. Their mouths all dropped. They were all shocked and loved it so much. It's such a beautiful picture book. I will read it with the students that I teach for the rest of my teaching career. I can't share the book enough. It is absolutely phenomenal. I asked Dan the question, why did you choose to dedicate After the Fall to your wife? And his response, much like After the Fall, took my breath away, and I've spent weeks thinking about what he had to say. Watch this video. It's really important, and it will, I believe, have a big impact on you. So thank you so much for watching. Dan, why did you dedicate After the Fall to your wife?
Well, my wife has suffered from anxiety for most of her life. And the way she usually would cope with it is if there was a situation or a condition that would give her anxiety or stress, she would basically avoid that trigger completely by just altering and tailoring her life in a way that she wouldn't have to encounter that particular trigger. So, for example, let's say she didn't want to go to a party because it was going to be very loud and crowded. She just wouldn't go to that party. Things change a little bit when you have children. And as the good wife and mother that she wanted to be, she would go to these events and things which probably would encounter some triggers that she would normally avoid. And it was very hard on her emotionally, dealing with someone with anxiety. Sometimes it wouldn't be great for family situations. The stress really takes over, your mindset. You tend to snap at people. You tend to get very irritable. You just don't want to be there. And just living in a family environment with anxiety wasn't always the easiest case for my wife. And so in After the Fall, the events take place shortly after Humpty Dumpty has fallen off the wall, and now he is left with a fear of heights. And when you read the story, you realize that Humpty Dumpty is tailoring his life to avoid situations where he would end up in high places where he can possibly fall again. So, for example, he would go to a grocery store, and rather than picking the fun cereals at the top aisle that are high up on a shelf, he would settle for the more boring grown-up cereals that are on the bottom. Now, my wife and I reached a point where living with anxiety and having to deal with kids was coming to a crossroads where her ability to be happy was being affected by her anxiety. And she very much wanted to be available for all these family outings and events that we go to, but it was very hard, and it was just very strenuous on her body. Shortly after having our second child, we realized that she was suffering from postpartum depression, and it got to the point where she just wasn't happy. She was having a hard time getting through the day, and that just kind of snowballs into other things. It affects her work. It affects a marriage. It affects your ability to do all the things you want to do as a mother. So she went out and she sought help. She saw a doctor who gave her medication. And I remember specifically the first 2 or 3 weeks into taking the medication, it took a little bit of the edge of the stress off of her. And you would think that someone might be feeling pretty good after that, but actually the opposite happened. She took the medication, and suddenly she was worried that her body was being dishonest or not telling her the truth. Living an entire life where she felt like fear was something dangerous was around every corner. When her body suddenly told her that trouble wasn't there, she felt like maybe her body wasn't doing its best to keep her safe. And I remember, we were having this discussion saying, look, hon, I think you should do what the doctor recommends and take the drugs for the next 6 to 8 weeks and just see what happens. And she agreed. And when we reached that moment, she was a completely different person. It was like I found that person that I fell in love with in college all over again. Like when you're a young parent and you're taking care of 2 kids, sometimes you feel like you're a chicken with your head cut off, and you don't really have time to take care of yourself or make sure that you have all the tools you need to keep your own sanity. And that you tend to lose control of that sometimes. And so 5 years later with 2 kids, when we reflect on it in hindsight, we realized that my wife actually went through a couple years of postpartum depression, which, you don't realize when you're in the middle of it. But it's funny because it's not an easy thing to tackle. Fear is a really tough beast to take on, and stress and anxiety, and living an entire life in a way that that works, and then suddenly realizing you might have to make some adjustments to your life in order for things to continue. It takes a lot of courage. And in this book, Humpty Dumpty ends up in a situation where he has to face that wall all over again. And he gets to a crossroad wondering if he needs to walk away and just never face that wall again, or overcome his fear and try to challenge the wall so that fear is not a problem of his anymore. And I don't want to spoil the ending, but, when and if someone were to approach that big obstacle in their life, it can be life-changing. And, my wife has been on medication for about 5 years now. And it's something that we will look back and reflect on. And she says to me, I don't know how I lived my life like that. And, and I'm really proud of her. I'm really proud of her and her willingness to go after this thing that has been kind of like a big troll on her back for much of her life. And, I did a lot of growing as well. I did a lot of soul searching in terms of just trying to understand this beast that is anxiety. And I mean, she's a much stronger person than I am. I have a horrible resentment for anxiety. Like, I hate what it does to people. I hate that it feels like it can take something from somebody. And then it just overwhelms you with fear so that you never want to try to cross that line ever again. So After the Fall is a love letter to my wife. She actually got a bird tattoo on her back, a bird feather, which is birds are a big part of the book. And so, yeah, it's a love letter to my wife, and it's an honor. It's a wave to her courage.
Thank you so much for watching, Dan. I appreciate you sharing your story. You are an amazing human being, and that is a powerful message. Friends, please share this a lot of people need to hear what Dan had to say. A lot of people would benefit from that. I think it would help a lot of people not feel alone, and a lot of people learn some things about something that maybe they don't understand. Dan, just again, thank you so much. Friends, consider liking, subscribing, all that fun stuff that people see at the end of YouTube videos. It means the world to me. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy reading.